Hey, I'm Jeff Baumgartner with Light Reading. We're here at the Big 5G event in Denver, Colorado, and I'm pleased to be joined by Kyle Ronning with John Deere. So thanks for joining us here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jeff.
Sure thing. So he says, I think we're going to be talking a little bit about private networks. It's been a growing focus, for John Deere. So first question, how are private networks making smart manufacturing a reality right now?
Well, yeah, John Deere is a big industrial company, and we've got many factories globally. Using information to help us make informed decisions helps us drive quality improvements, safety improvements, productivity improvements in the factories. And so historically we've been looking at connecting our devices with wired or Wi-Fi connections. But we've recently started to embrace cellular communication as a way to allow us to take advantage of the new technologies and capabilities being introduced with technologies like 5G. And so we think that this is a key turning point for us to actually introduce cellular connectivity in our factories so that we can take advantage of the low latency, the high bandwidth, the quality of service components that come with that, and really enable us to make more flexible factories, less dependencies on assets that are hardwired into the facility, and being able to communicate with devices that are mobile and in transit where latency becomes very important.
Right. And since we're, there's the cellular connectivity, there's wireless, but we're talking some private. Let's talk a little bit about the kind of the role of private networks and why are private networks optimal for a connectivity solution for a smart factory?
So the private network component is really kind of a new thought for us, and the value that it brings is around. You get the benefits of 5G, but you also get the control and the security by being able to configure it to align with the organization's security policies and privacy policies. So having that level of control really makes this an appealing technology, so that we're not dependent on a third party to implement strategies for data security.
Okay. I know this is kind of in the early stages, the early innings, but what's kind of the short-term and long-term vision, for using private networks in manufacturing?
So if we were to have you at one of our factories today, you'd see that there's a lot of assets with hardwired connections, right? Okay. So Ethernet cables, we got miles of Ethernet cables, lots of network switches, and we think the short-term value proposition of the cellular connectivity is by being able to take all of that infrastructure out, and by doing so, it really makes us very nimble. We can respond to changes in the facility. We can pick assets up and move them without the additional expense of having to, remove all those wires and then reinstall them. And so we think that this is going to really help us respond to customer changes, new product offerings, and really add a lot of flexibility to the factories. And so in the short term, that's really where our focus is. Okay. If we talk long term, we think that the value is really unlocked with additional use cases around data. Being able to extract data and use the 5G connections allow us to process it through machine learning and artificial intelligence solutions so that we can deliver optimized actions back to the shop floor. Things go from being pre-planned programs to dynamic programs, and we can respond to events taking place in the facility in real time, really allowing us to optimize the facility on many different parameters around quality and safety and productivity.
Okay, and when we were talking about private networks in general, one idea you kind of brought to the top was control, right? So how do you go about integrating IoT devices into these private network environments? Do you take on that role? individually? Do you rely on somebody else? How do you do that?
Well, how we've approached it to this point is we've identified a supplier to help us stand up the hardware component of the infrastructure and really provide us the SIMs, right? The SIM cards and eSIMs for the network, and then we're taking the role of actually. Provisioning those SIMs into the devices so that we can ensure that they're on the right segments, they've got the right permissions and security policies associated with them, and we deploy them as they fit into the needs of the organization.
Okay. We did talk a little bit about kind of the long-term, short-term, but I mean, talk a little bit about John Deere's journey, into deploying, private networks and manufacturing. How did it kind of originate, and where do you kind of see it going from this point? Maybe priorities for heading into next year, maybe. Yeah,
so we've had some ideas around this for a while, but really turned this into action last year. So last fall, we participated in the FCC Spectrum auction and obtained a priority access license for 5 counties in the Midwest. Those counties we have significant presence in, and some of our larger manufacturing facilities are located. From that point, the first of the year, this year, the FCC provided us those spectrums, and that's when we kind of went out to find the right supplier to help us stand up the network. We've accomplished that. We've completed our first site surveys, and we've got hardware being delivered to us where we forecast to have our first network stood up by the end of October.
Okay, great. Well, great wishes on the path forward. It was great to kind of hear where John Deere is right now in this process, and I really thank you for joining us here.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. We're really excited about the topic of 5G. We've got a lot of momentum and energy around this in our organization. And again, pleased to be with you today. I appreciate the invitation.
All right, you bet, Kyle. Thanks.
Thank you.